Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're moving on to the next episode in my category breakdown series, and in today's video we're taking a look at Best Sound. Now if you're new to this series, this video is going to be in a playlist with all of the other episodes in the series. I think we're down to the final 3 categories, so there's a whole lot of content for you to go over. But basically all this is, just a quick rundown, is for the last 3 years I've taken a look at every single individual category at the upcoming Academy Awards, and we take a look at all 5 of the nominees in the category. We talk about the films and why they're worthy and why it's a good thing that they got nominated, or maybe a bad thing why they got nominated in their categories. It's mostly good, especially this year, it's all good. So we just talk about why they got nominated. We talk about the individual artists that are nominated alongside the film. So in this category we're talking about the sound designers of the film. And then after kind of going over their history, their previous Oscar nominations, things like that, at the end I give you my personal ranking of all the films 1 through 5 on how I would vote for them in the category, and then I give you my prediction for how likely it is that I think they win the Academy Award this Sunday, March 15th. Without further ado, let's take a look at the nominees.
F1.
Sound designers Gareth John, Al Nelson, Gwendolyn Yates-Whittle, Gary A. Rizzo, and Juan Peralta. This is Gareth John's second Oscar nomination. He won in 2025 for Dune Part 2. This is Al Nelson's second Oscar nomination. He won in 2023 for Top Gun Maverick. This is Gwendolyn Yates-Whittle's fourth Oscar nomination. She was nominated in 2023 for Avatar: The Way of Water, in 2011 for Tron Legacy, and in 2010 for Avatar. This is Gary A. Rizzo's eighth Oscar nomination. He won in 2018 for Dunkirk, and in 2011 for Inception. He was also nominated in 2025 for The Wild Robot, in 2024 for Oppenheimer, in 2015 for Interstellar, in 2009 for The Dark Knight, and in 2005 for The Incredibles. This is Juan Peralta's first Oscar nomination. F1 won for Best Sound at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Cinema Audio Society Awards. Now, in probably what was like the most obvious nominee here in this category, F1, anytime you get like a racing movie, a sports movie, a car movie, any of those genres, I feel like they vary, especially if it's a good film, it very likely tends, to lead itself into that sound nomination. This happens to be all of those: sports, racing, cars, and it's really a good movie because it's Best Picture nominee. Like, there's so many factors going for this that this was, I think, kind of essentially the easy, guaranteed, like it was going to get nominated, but also the guaranteed winner. And this is, for me, a no-brainer too, because when F1 came out, I was a little hesitant because I like Top Gun Maverick nowhere near as much as like everyone else loves Top Gun Maverick. It's the next Joseph Kosinski film, and I'm thinking, okay, I didn't like his last one as much as everyone, and so I'm a little nervous. And then I was nervous because I'm like, I don't really like Formula One. Like, I'm not big into car movies. Ford v Ferrari was a film that I liked it more now than I first watched it, but I just wasn't excited for Ford v Ferrari. I didn't really like it, and so in my head I'm just like, any sort of kind of sports car racing movie, I'm just like, I don't know if it's for me. So I was hesitant going into F1. And then I went in, and I'm not gonna lie, it was probably like about almost a month maybe after it came out. Like, it had been in theaters for a while, and I went on a random Tuesday, like a random weekday, and I was thinking like, okay, this is gonna be like a pretty small theater. And I go and I'm looking up showtimes, and I see that it's still playing like in IMAX. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. So I go. Actually, no, I don't think it was IMAX, but it was like the like Dolby Atmos. Like, it was a still really good screen and great speakers, great sound. And so I go in, and all of a sudden I'm looking around in this theater, and it's packed. Like, a month in, this theater is still packed. And all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, this is kind of crazy. And then the film starts, and it's pretty quick, pretty instantly, that you get a good sense of the sound work. The theater, it was loud, it was beautiful. Like, it was just real impressive. I've seen some of the things when talking about the sound in this film. Mainly, I think, like, the Next Best Picture podcast is where I was listening, and they were kind of talking about, like, it's hard to understand, the like, coaches and the headsets and stuff. But I think that's pretty authentic to, like, that's what those headsets sound like, especially when you're in a car that's going extremely fast. Like, it's kind of makes for that, microphone sound. Like, I think that's, even though maybe it's not crystal clear audio, I think it's really good sound for what it is. There's just so much about this film. All of the racing scenes in particular, especially the scenes where, because there's a lot of it where the score is kind of coming in. I think the score and the sound play off each other really well, but I also think that there's some specific scenes where there is no score and you're focusing a little bit more, like they're highlighting the tire screeches and the crashes as they're crashing into other cars or into barriers or things like that. Like, it does a great job of just really emphasizing that sound. And this more so than, I guess, alongside the visual effects and some of the other, kind of crafts of the film, this is, I think, is almost the thing that makes it the most immersive. This is the thing that makes it feel like this is real. You're watching a real Formula race. Sometimes you are in the car with the racers. The sound design is just so immersive and makes it feel really real. For my personal rank, I'm putting F1 in second, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in first.
Frankenstein.
Sound designers Greg Chapman, Nathan Robitaille, Nelson Ferreira, Christian Cook, and Brad Zorn. This is Greg Chapman's first Oscar nomination. This is Nathan Robitaille, Nathan Ferreira, Christian Cook, and Brad Zorn's second Oscar nomination. They were all nominated together in 2018 for The Shape of Water. Frankenstein was nominated for Best Sound at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Cinema Audio Society Awards. Now, Frankenstein is one of those films that I think, when you take a look at this category, oftentimes you'll see things in here, you'll see a film in here that's in here for, one specific reason. Sometimes it's one specific scene that's just great sound design. Then there's things like Frankenstein that I definitely think has some scenes that kind of excel, but I think it's just kind of the totality of the work. From start to finish, it's just great sound design all throughout for various multiple different things. Obviously, kind of the opening scene, or a lot of the scenes with everything revolving around the ship, where they're trying to fix the ship, and you've got the wind blowing, and as Frankenstein approaches, you're kind of getting him walking in, either the snow or other scenes, kind of just walking in whatever the grass or whatever. But it's just you can feel the heavy steps as he's walking. I think that's done excellently. But specifically that boat scene, you've got again all the sounds of them working on the boat, the creaks of it. Even when they're on the boat or inside the boat, the kind of the creaking of the doors and stuff, everything just kind of revolving from the outside sets, revolving around just kind of again mostly like that with the wind. I think it's a very powerful, it's just great sound work there. Then it's a film that again I think it's just kind of as the film goes, it's just essentially every scene, whether it's when he's in the lab. Kind of working, on creating Frankenstein, and he's going through different things, because again, you're kind of tossing, whatever, tools or, things like that he's working on the machines to get it to work. You've got, I guess specifically, this is probably worth highlighting, the scene, the birth scene, the creation scene of Frankenstein. That probably is the scene that is, what kind of is the highlight of the sound design in the film, because that's done excellently. Frankenstein, it's just the sound work from start to finish, all the way through the film. It's just, it's not like they're just again relying on one thing. It's constant all throughout the film. One thing that I find kind of fascinating about this category in terms of kind of the precursors is the majority of these, basically all but one of these films, they've all been nominated together in almost essentially every precursor. So it seems like you kind of have a pretty good idea of kind of just what the sound films are. For me, I feel like Frankenstein's maybe kind of always been in fifth place or fourth, I guess, in the categories that don't have our fifth film in it. But I think for the most part it feels like it's always kind of been in there, so I don't think it really has much of a chance at winning. It's not really all that strong of a contender, but again, I do think that it is great sound design all throughout the film, and so I think it is worthy of its nomination. For my personal rank, I'm putting Frankenstein in fifth, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in fifth.
One battle after another.
Sound designers Jose Antonio Garcia, Christopher Scarabosio, and Tony Villafort. This is Jose Antonio Garcia's third Oscar nomination. He was nominated in 2019 for Roma, and in 2013 for Argo. This is Christopher Scarabosio's fourth Oscar nomination. He was nominated in 2017 for Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, in 2016 for Star Wars, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, and in 2008 for There Will Be Blood. This is Tony Villafort's first Oscar nomination. One Battle After Another was nominated for Best Sound at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Cinema Audio Society Awards. And I guess this is another thing I probably should have mentioned when I was talking about F1, and I was talking about sports movies or racing movies or car movies. There's kind of a fourth category that I think kind of goes in there that's pretty oftentimes nominated in sounds, and it's guns. Anytime you've got great sound designed from guns, bullets, and that's exactly what typically it almost feels like. It's kind of, those are more for war movies, specifically like a 1917 or All Quiet on the Western Front or something like that. But I guess in a sense, One Battle After Another is a war movie, kind of not your typical war movie, but as the title says, it's about battles. So it is. I think that is kind of the big highlight of this, and this is another one of those films where I think there is maybe one scene, kind of the car chase scene, again, cars, that goes into it as well. I think maybe that is kind of one of the highlight scenes of the sound design, but I think this kind of fits alongside Frankenstein, where it's just throughout the film, again, because there's just multiple scenes of, whether it's open gunfire. Maybe it's only kind of one person with the gun at a time, and so you're kind of hearing kind of like maybe it's just one bullet, at a moment where essentially kind of like in the first act of the film is where there's a couple just kind of solo bullets being fired. But then obviously it gets a little bit more intense as the film goes on. There's kind of the whole like the what's the best word I'm looking for? It's the scene where Leo is escaping over the roof, and I guess you like a riot. I don't. It's kind of like in the background, so you don't exactly see all of what's going on, but you've got like all of the police officers, and then you've got the crowds, and you've got like the fireworks going off in the background. Like that sounds great. The scene of Leo as he's jumping off the roof, falls off the roof. That's great sound design work. Right before you get toward the end of the film, before you get to the actual real car chase scene, you got. I guess essentially it's all kind of one big extended car scene because you've got Leo in the car with Benicio del Toro's character Sensei as he's kicking him out of the car. You've got it's good sound design there, and then you've got Willa as she's kind of taking over that car that she's in, opening and closing, slamming the doors, and then just peeling off. So you got the tire like peeling off on the ground, and then you've got Leo as he's pulling up to the booth or whatever that's on like the side of the road, and he's asking for directions. He's peeling off kind of in the dirt. Like there's so much again in this film revolving around, I would say, the guns and the cars is specifically what is getting it this recognition in the sound category, and it is all great work. For my personal rank, I'm putting One Battle After Another in 4th, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in 3rd.
Sinners.
Sound designers Chris Welker, Benjamin A. Burt, Felipe Pacheco, Brandon Proctor, and Steve Bodeker. This is Chris Welker and Felipe Pacheco's first Oscar nomination. This is Benjamin A. Burt and Brandon Proctor's second Oscar nomination. They were nominated together in 2019 for Black Panther. This is Steve Bodeker's fourth Oscar nomination. He was nominated twice in 2019 for sound editing and sound mixing Black Panther, and in 2014 for All Is Lost. Sinners was nominated for Best Sound at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Cinema Audio Society Awards. Now, Sinners, I think, very much kind of continues like what I was saying about this is a film to me where I think there is one singular scene that is, again, the highlight, is the scene that is showing off so many different things. And if you've seen any of the other episodes, or if you've seen the film, you know what scene I'm talking about, because it's the scene that I keep referencing almost in, like, every category, because it's, like, for one singular moment where everything is firing on all cylinders, and the film kind of reaches its, like, the ultimate, like, just level in this one particular scene. It is the I Lied to You sequence in the juke joint, and this is, where you've got, essentially, I mean, it kind of is, it's not, I'm not saying that that's the only scene with great sound, obviously, that's, a lot of the things that are the great sound in that specific scene is throughout the film as well, but again, I'm just talking about this scene because it's the thing that, like, highlights, I think, so many different things, where you've got the live music playing, you've got the, tapping on the floor, as you're getting into the sound. Obviously, once that scene kind of continues and it becomes into the actual song, like, it's kind of not really sound design anymore. I mean, obviously it is, like, you're editing and mixing all of that sound onto the, like, into the film. So, like, obviously that still counts. But I'm like, I focus, I think, more so, always, maybe it's not as much the song as much as it is kind of like the sound that is leading into it, or like the sound that leads into the score. And again, a lot of it is because there's live music playing, and so it's a lot of people tapping on their foot or people dancing on the floor, kind of moving around. The hustling and bustling of this party here at the juke joint just creates for, like, I mean, just like, even if you think of just like all of the conversations being had in the background, like the background sound that really kind of fills out this room and makes this juke joint feel like it is a real party is happening. Like in this, it doesn't feel like it's just a stage and people are kind of being quiet so that you can hear Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld. Like it's a full immersive experience inside the juke joint. They do an excellent job of really crafting that sound inside there. But there's just all sorts of other. I mean, because again, I mentioned guns and One Battle After Another. There's not as many guns, but there's a couple. There's one particular like gunshot scene I can think of. Actually, no, there's multiple. There's definitely multiple gunshot scenes. But there's one kind of earlier in the film, and then there's everything kind of like in, once the vampires come into play, you have a whole lot of kind of the sound design there. You've got I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler, but not too much of a spoiler if you're watching a vampire film. There's going to be some death, both human and vampires, and so you kind of got some of that, like all of the sound is like in that big kind of fight sequence toward the end of the film. Just a lot of great sound design work there. Sinners is one of those where, because it's this More so, I would say, oh no, obviously F1's the biggest action movie here. But then, like, I would say Sinners is probably the second biggest action movie really in there. And so you just have a whole lot of sound design is, I think, crucial for getting a film that's, an action film to really work. But that's just part of the thing that I think is amazing about Sinners. Cause I just called it like an action, but I would say it's horror is its primary. But then there's also definitely some drama in there. Like it's a thing that has multiple different emotions, and I think the sound design, because again during the horror sequences, like I think of the scene where Haley Steinfeld's character is going out and talking to Jack O'Connell and all them. The sound of while they're outside the juke joint, you can still hear the party playing inside. You hear just kind of again she's walking across like the rocks, getting over to them as they're sitting on like those logs. They start playing again their live music outside. So it's one of those again the live music aspect of this I think is the biggest thing. But then just the care and attention to detail on so many other kind of things alongside in the film really leads for this full great sound experience. And this is another one for me that I won't forget seeing this in theaters. Actually, now that I think about it, I saw all 5 of these in theaters. But Sinners, I won't forget when I saw that in theaters, seeing the sound design kick in, especially like again I talk about during the juke joint scene. Obviously is like obviously just a masterful, like watching that in theaters was just phenomenal. But again, like the scene where the vampires come in and the aspect ratio changed, in the theater and stuff, like that scene also, it just instantly kicks in and you're in for this amazing scene. There's just multiple real scenes in this film that are just so obvious, like great sound design work, and that's really what it's doing here in this category, why it got nominated, why it's getting this recognition. For my personal rank, I'm putting Sinners in third, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in second.
And Surratt.
Sound designers Amanda Villaveja, Leia Casanovas, and Yasmina Paredes. This is the first Oscar nomination for all 3 of Amanda Villaveja, Leia Casanova, and Yasmina Paredes. Surratt wasn't nominated for Best Sound at any of the major precursors. Now, the reason some of the videos that are coming out today, sound and international film, the reason these are essentially the last categories I'm getting to is because Surratt just was not available. Like, it's not available to rent, it wasn't in theaters, there was no showtimes. Like, I was just not able to see this film until yesterday. It finally came to one, like, singular theater in my, not even really in my area, I kind of have to drive a little bit for it, but it's the one theater that kind of gets these type of films. They finally had some showtimes, so I finally was able to go and see Surratt. And again, you know where I'm putting this in my personal ranking if you're paying attention to the board, and so I don't know if this is just like bias because it's the most recent film I've seen, but I was just absolutely blown away when I saw Surratt. And I think it makes sense why it didn't catch on anywhere, because it's probably, it's the international film, it probably, some of these other bodies like Critics' Choice or whatever, even if it made their lineups for international films, like I can maybe kind of see why it's just not the film that people are thinking about nominating outside of like it's just kind of stuck in its international category at some precursors. And so I think it's really great that the Academy really, clearly the voting members, the people that vote on the nominations, they clearly saw it enough to get it the international vote, but also to get it the sound design vote, because the sound design is just phenomenal in this film. And this is one that's going to be hard to kind of talk about because there's like four things I really want to highlight about the sound design in this work. And at least 2 of them are kind of spoilery. So I'll tell you my first 2, and then I'll kind of give you a warning on the second 2. And even when I go into those, I'm not going to exactly say what they are. Just know it's a little spoilery. But in this film, the only thing I knew about it going in was that it was about raves and about ravers. And I kind of remember going in thinking like, okay, so it's going to have a lot of music, but it's the same thing. Sometimes I have a hard time being like, okay, well, when is it music and when is it the score? Like, and if a film has a great score, are you highlighting or nominating it in sound because they did a great job of laying the score on the film? And so I'm like, I kind of was a little nervous about it. And then I watched the film, and there's definitely some scenes where it really just does become score. But again, there's a lot of scenes, multiple scenes in the film, some pretty key, like, important scenes where it's just live music. It's they're playing it through the speakers, like it's not just layered over the score, and then multiple scenes of when it's the live music playing, and then it'll cut to like our main characters, the father and son, that are in their van or whatever off to the side, and you can just hear the rave going on in the background. Like that is, I think, kind of what is like really highlighting the great sound in that, because it's not just something that's just kind of a score that's put over, and it's just you add a track onto the when you've got the film in the editing, you just put a track on there and you move on and you call it a day. Like, you're blending that in. And also, again, with this music, the rave music, the score being kind of like a big highlight of the film, is they're kind of, it's, again, they're not just slapping it on and moving on. Like, it's very careful the way that they're putting this in, because the way the characters are interacting with the score, like, that is, they're moving the rave, like, it moves them in this dance that they're doing. And so it's like, it's very kind of important for the characters. So that is the first thing. I think it's kind of the big thing that gets the film nominated here, and I think it's done really well. The second thing I'll talk about that's not really much of a spoiler, but there's a lot of scenes where multiple characters are outside, but specifically the father, our main character, where he's outside and the wind is just blowing like crazy, and it is this intense and like just a real kind of scary situation. Like, it's wind isn't always like scary, but in this instance, in this film, after kind of the events of what's been happening, the way that this wind is howling and blowing, and just like the sound design is so incredible, where it's like it creates like the wind was scary. It was like it creates a situation where you're like, this is real intense for what our characters are going through. And kind of the same thing alongside, I guess it's kind of an additional thing, but like, obviously you've got a lot of this film is driving in cars, and so there is the sound, or like when they're driving kind of like on the cliffs and stuff, and they're driving over the rocks, and the rocks are kind of falling off the cliff. Those are some of the kind of things that, just kind of small things here and there, that I think are worth highlighting. Now, the two things, again, a little bit of a spoiler, so if you just don't want any spoiler, go ahead and just kind of skip to the end of this section. But I will say that there's two kind of things that also are highlights of the sound design, and it's the car crash. That's all I'm going to say, so I don't want to spoil anything more than that. The car crash and explosions. I'm not going to say what's exploding, but those are the two kind of things where it's the car crash scene and an explosion scene. That the sound design in those make it so immersive, and like, when I was watching this, because I knew nothing about the film, I was not expecting either of those scenes. I don't think anyone is. Like, they're so not complete. One of them is completely out of the blue. The other one's maybe not so super out of the blue, but it's like shocking the way it happens. And I think part of like what left me with just my jaw dropped in the theater during those scenes was the way that the sound is crafted in those scenes. It was haunting. And so this was a film that I remember kind of walking out, and I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm still thinking about it, and I'm still like haunted by the film in a sense, because it's just so abrupt and sudden in certain scenes. And I think, again, haunting is the best word, and I think the sound design is what kind of makes the film all lively and fun at points, but it's also what kind of adds to the haunting nature of this film. I just thoroughly love the sound design work here in Seurat. For my personal rank, I'm putting Seurat in first, and for my prediction, I'm putting it in fourth. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of this category. What film are you rooting for in the category, and who do you think will win? Let me know all of it down below. And if you'd like to like this video and then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes in this series or any of the other series that I have going on my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.